He is asleep, and then the ground heaves, lifting and dropping beneath him. Air is driven from his chest before his eyes open, a hard push that leaves him empty and tight. There is no sound at first, only pressure and a hollow ringing that fills the space inside his head. Grit rests on his tongue when he swallows. Above him, the canvas roof hangs dark and unmoving. The tremor fades in small steps, like something letting go. He stays still, hands pressed into the dirt, counting without numbers. His body feels heavy, unfinished. The thought arrives flat and familiar, not again, and he waits before breathing deeper. A wooden tent pole stands near his shoulder, rough grain dusted with fine sand. Movement comes first. He shifts his weight, palms sliding slightly, before the sound reaches him. Then it arrives in a broken roll, a crack that splits into smaller pieces and keeps breaking as it travels. The air carries it unevenly,
everyone settled in
never
for the night?
settling in one place.
Yeah, just trying to stay warm.
Nearby, shapes move in the low light, men adjusting positions without words. A cough cuts through once and ends abruptly. He presses his face into the dirt, damp sand against his cheek, grounding himself in the pressure. His jaw locks without thought. Breathing stays shallow, measured. The canvas above holds its shape while the noise continues to scatter and fade. He does not lift his head. He waits. A canvas tent wall hangs slack beside him, stained in places and creased along old folds. A voice says it was close. Another answers that it was lower ground. The words pass over him without shape. He pictures stacked crates only because the mind needs something to hold, though he has not seen them. Before light reaches the tent, the smell arrives. It settles in his throat, oily and thick, changing the way each breath moves. He swallows once and feels his stomach draw tight. Beyond the canvas, a faint glow rises and falls, uneven, as if blinking. Heat presses through in slow pulses, warming his face, then easing back. A second thump follows, duller than the first, heavy enough to be felt more than heard. The ground answers it with a brief shudder. He shifts his knees, adjusting to the warmth, to the air, to the weight of it all. His body stays alert, drained at the same time, holding steady without instruction. The smell does not clear. He understands, without effort, that this will repeat, that the body will remember it this way. The thought settles and does not move. A packed dirt floor lies ridged beneath him, pressed hard by boots and knees. Light seeps in without warmth, a thin gray pressing through the canvas. He slides a hand along the fabric beside him and feels how stiff it has gone overnight. No one says the time. He sits up carefully, neck resisting as if caught, and pauses until it loosens. The ground beneath him still hums, faint but present, a low vibration that hasn't fully left. Dust shifts as he settles his weight. Morning arrives without ceremony, already thinned out, as if used up somewhere else. The thought comes quietly, without complaint, too early, and he stays seated, letting the feeling pass back into the ground. A steel helmet rests nearby in the dim light, its rim gritty and scratched from handling. Voices move through the tent in short pieces. No names attached to them. Someone says ammunition. Later, another voice adds gasoline, as if finishing a thought left open. The words barely register before the smell takes over. It coats the inside of his nose, sharp and dry, burning as he draws air in. Outside, smoke drifts low across the ground, a slow black roll that does not hurry. He turns his head slightly, testing the air, then stills. Breathing shortens on its own, careful and controlled. His jaw tightens and stays there. The body holds tension without asking. The instruction forms quietly and repeats, "Don't breathe deep," and he follows it, waiting for the air to change. Scuffed combat boots sit in a loose line, soles caked with dirt and fine ash. The wind shifts once, a small change felt more than seen. Smoke slides toward them, low and heavy, then drifts back the way it came. No one comments. He watches it closely, turning his head as it moves, tracking its edge as if it might stop on command. Ash settles on his sleeve, a light dusting that darkens the fabric. The smell thickens, then thins, carried unevenly by the air. His eyes sting and water, and he blinks until the burning eases enough to see again. The ridge line ahead fades in and out, briefly erased, then returned. He keeps his breathing short, controlled, letting the air pass without pulling it deep. The smoke makes its own decisions, rolling where it will, ignoring the men beneath it. His jaw tightens as he follows its path a moment longer. Watch it, he thinks, and lowers his gaze as the wind moves on. Web gear straps lie twisted across a knee, dampened by sweat and dusted with grit. He cannot see the dump from where he sits. The ground ahead is blurred by smoke that stays low, pressed close to the earth. Still, he knows where it is. The smell draws a line through the air, thickening as he turns his head, thinning when he turns back. Each breath redraws its position. An oily residue coats his mouth, and he swallows to clear it, only to taste it again. The smoke shifts slowly, breaking apart and settling, but the source holds steady in his mind. He leans forward slightly, palms on his knees, testing the air with short breaths. His stomach tightens and then eases, unsettled but manageable. He keeps still and lets the air move around him. Even as the smoke spreads and thins, the location remains fixed by smell alone, sharper than any outline. He understands that this is how it will stay with him, mapped inside the body rather than the eyes. The ground looks the same in every direction, but the air says otherwise. He adjusts his posture, breath careful, marking the place without looking. The thought settles simply, here, and he lets the smoke drift on while the sense of it stays put. A canvas pack sits close at hand, straps pulled tight and seams roughened by sand. The smoke thins until the horizon line clears, leaving the air quiet and still. He wipes his lips with the back of his hand and tastes dust that wasn't there before. The smell stays, flattened into the breath, unchanged by the open view. No one mentions it. He shifts and sits where he is told, knees settling into the ground. Breathing resumes in short pulls, careful and practiced, different from earlier without effort to correct it. A dull pressure gathers behind his eyes and holds. He swallows once, then again, and lets his shoulders drop. The air does not move. He stays. A metal canteen lies on its side near him, cap dull and body filmed with dust. There is nothing to do. The air stays quiet except for small movements, fabric shifting, gear settling. Orders do not arrive. Men sit in a loose line, adjusting straps that do not need adjusting, tightening and loosening them again. He draws his knees in and feels the pull in his legs, cramped from holding the same position too long. His hands rest in front of him, and he studies them instead of the ground, tracing the cracked skin along his knuckles with his thumb. Movement is minimal, almost careful, as if too much might invite notice. His breathing stays even, though the body wants to rise and walk it off. Restless fatigue sits heavy in his limbs. He keeps his eyes on the slow work of other hands, small motions repeating without purpose. The thought comes and settles, wait it out, and he stays where he is. A loose gear buckle catches faint light, metal dulled and nicked where it rubs against webbing. Time breaks itself into sounds. A distant thud rolls through the ground and reaches him through his boots, a faint vibration that lingers and fades. He holds his jaw tight without noticing until it aches. Another impact follows later, far enough apart that it feels like a marker, setting the last one behind it. He counts without numbers, only by separation. Between them, the air hangs still, hazed and empty. Silence stretches and becomes something to notice on its own. He shifts his weight slightly, testing the ground, and waits for the next sound to arrive and give shape to the gap. The pattern never settles. Each thud stands alone, then leaves him with nothing but the space after it. His attention stays fixed forward, alert without urgency, moving only when the vibration returns. The thought passes through, thin and steady, still here, and he remains seated as the haze holds. A dust-coated fabric sleeve brushes his wrist as he shifts, the cloth stiff with grit. He cannot say how long has passed. The light changes a little, not enough to mark an hour, just enough to notice if he looks up. His mouth feels dry, and he works his jaw once, then again, without relief. Hunger shows itself briefly, a dull pull low in his body, then eases away as if it were mistaken. He shifts his weight and watches a shadow creep across the ground, slow and unsure of its direction. The air stays still. No signal arrives to separate one stretch from the next. He stops trying to measure it. The body keeps its own count through pressure and fatigue, through the steady thinning of energy. His breathing settles into a narrow rhythm, remembering the work for him. He rests his hands on his thighs and feels the warmth there fade slightly as the light moves on. Not knowing becomes easier than tracking. The thought forms without effort, endure, and he lets it sit while the shadow continues its quiet crawl. His muscles loosen by giving up. He leans forward without meaning to, palms pressing into packed dirt that holds its shape. The line of seated men looks the same when he glances sideways. No one shifts. The air does not move. His shoulders drop another inch, and he slouches, finding a position that asks less. Limbs feel heavy, weighted where they rest, and he stops adjusting them. Stillness becomes something practiced, learned through repetition. Breathing stays shallow and even. Movement feels unnecessary now, almost distant. The thought settles low and firm, don't move, and he lets the ground keep him there a while longer. Folded paper sheets sit in his hands, edges softened and creased from being opened and closed. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out the paper, folded and unfolded enough times to hold its creases. The edge feels rough against his fingers as he smooths it on his knee. Nearby, men clean their gear in small, practiced motions, metal touching metal, cloth dragged across surfaces. A low rumble passes through the ground and fades. He brings out the pencil and turns it once between his fingers. It feels short, worn down from use. His fingers ache as he grips it, cramped but steady. He settles the paper again, adjusting it until it lies flat enough to take a line. The noise continues without pause. He lowers his head slightly, narrowing the space in front of him. The thought comes clear and brief, right now, and he sets the point to the page. A short pencil rests between his fingers, wood worn smooth where it has been held too often. He starts a sentence and gets only a few words down before stopping. The pencil lifts and hovers. His shoulders tighten as he listens to the space around him, to the distant concussions breaking apart and returning again. He erases the line slowly, dragging the side of his thumb across the page until graphite smears and dulls the paper. Knees drawn up, he shifts his weight and tries again, choosing words that take up less room. Another impact rolls through the ground, and he waits for it to pass before pressing the point down. The pencil scratches lightly. He keeps the sentences short, trimmed back as soon as they form. Truth stays where it is, untouched. His shoulders ache from holding themselves tight. The strain sits behind his eyes as he reads what remains. The thought comes steady and practiced, no news, and he lets the pencil rest, listening as the noise moves on. The ground shifts while he is halfway through a word. The movement comes up through his legs and into his arm, a blunt lift and drop that rattles the page. He tightens his grip and keeps the pencil down, letting the point dig deeper into the paper. The letters wobble but hold their line. Dust shakes loose from the canvas overhead and drifts down in a thin fall, settling on his sleeve and the page. He does not look up. The shock passes in a rolling wave, pressure first, then sound following after, spreading and thinning as it moves away. His wrist begins to ache from holding steady against the vibration, but he finishes the line before easing off. The pencil scratches one last stroke and stops. He lifts it only then, flexing his fingers once. His focus stays narrow, fixed on the words already there. The noise continues outside his frame of attention. The thought remains simple and close, keep going, and he lowers the point again as the dust settles and the page steadies. He folds the paper carefully, pressing each crease firm with his thumb until it holds. The page feels smaller now, contained, the words tucked into tight lines that do not reach the edges. He slides it into his pack and pulls the strap closed, canvas rubbing once against itself. The background rumble returns to its usual place, low and steady, filling the space the writing occupied. His shoulders ease a fraction as he settles back, hands resting empty on his knees. Focus drains away, leaving a quiet dullness behind his eyes. He exhales through his nose and lets the moment pass. The thought arrives without weight, enough, and the noise carries on around him. He plants his boots and rises with care, feeling grit shift inside them as his weight comes forward. The ground feels farther away than it did before, as if it has settled lower overnight. Around him, men stand unevenly, each finding balance in their own time. He straightens partway and stops. His back resists, tight and unwilling, a dull pain spreading across it as he holds the position. There is a slight sway in the line, bodies adjusting to gravity and fatigue. He exhales and waits, hands resting on his thighs, letting the pull ease on its own. When he finishes standing, it is without hurry. The effort leaves him stiff and spent, more tired than before he moved. The thought stays close and practical, slow, and he remains still long enough for it to hold. He steps forward and his feet adjust without looking. The sole meets uneven rock, pressure shifting until it settles into a familiar angle. The ground runs off to one side, an angled line he no longer measures with his eyes. He takes another careful step, then another, letting the body remember what the mind does not track anymore. Balance comes from repetition, from having crossed the same slope enough times to trust it. A pull settles into his ankle, sharp for a moment, then dulls as weight redistributes. He slows without stopping, breathing steady as his legs do the work. Fatigue stays present but changes shape, adapting to the movement instead of resisting it. He reaches level ground and pauses, realizing only then that he hasn't thought about the slope at all. The place is marked now by feel alone. The thought flickers and passes, there, and he moves on as the ground holds. Pain does not rise or fall. It stays where it is, a tight pull along his lower back and into his legs, present without asking for attention. He stands still and lets it settle, feeling how the muscles hold and then ease just enough to continue. There is little movement around him, only small shifts of weight, boots planted, bodies upright and waiting. The ache spreads evenly, dull and familiar, no longer sharp enough to demand notice. He becomes aware of it only when it changes, when a step or a turn draws it slightly higher or lets it fade a fraction. His body adjusts without instruction, finding ways to stand that keep the pressure even. Breathing stays shallow and controlled, matching the stillness. Fatigue wraps around the discomfort and softens its edges. This is how it feels now, the baseline everything rests on. He accepts it without comment, standing where he is, letting the muscles hold what they must. The thought forms quietly and stays, this is it, as the moment stretches on without needing anything more. He lowers himself carefully, bending in stages, hands braced until his knees take the weight. Coarse sand presses through the fabric as he settles, shifting slightly before holding. The line of men drops with him, bodies finding the same low level again. Sitting feels earned, not comfortable, but allowed. A quiet relief spreads through his knees as the strain lifts. He does not rush to adjust or straighten. The air stays still, carrying no change with it. Fatigue sits deep now, heavy and settled, asking for nothing but stillness. He lets his hands rest where they fall and keeps his eyes forward. The ground receives him without response. The thought comes slowly and stays, rest, and he remains where he is. He looks at faces when they are at rest. Without speech or movement, expressions flatten, lines settling into the skin. Dried sweat marks pale tracks along temples and cheeks. From this angle, age is unclear, smoothed out by stillness and grime. He lets his gaze move slowly, noting small things, a jaw tightening and releasing, a blink held a moment too long, a mouth set without effort. The men sit close together, bodies clustered but separate, each holding their own space. Movement is minimal, limited to shifts that barely register. His eyes begin to ache from the effort of looking, a dull strain that builds behind them. Fatigue sharpens his attention instead of dulling it. He keeps watching, not searching for anything specific, just taking in what is there. The thought comes simple and unadorned, look, and he stays with it as the faces remain quiet. He knows the men by voice now. A sound comes from nearby, low and brief, and he recognizes it before he looks. The words themselves matter less than the way they are carried, flat, rough, or worn thin. Lips move with little moisture, voices catching slightly before settling. Heads stay close together, angled inward, but no one leans in. Low murmurs pass between them and fade without reply. Silence follows and holds its ground, heavier than the sounds that broke it. He feels the dryness in his own throat and swallows without speaking. Energy stays restrained, saved for later without knowing when later will come. He listens more than he answers, tracking tone instead of meaning. The air remains still, carrying only what is offered. The thought rests where it belongs, quiet, and he lets the space fill itself. They sit without speaking, close enough that fabric brushes fabric when someone shifts. No one pulls away. The cluster holds its shape, bodies angled forward, hands resting where they fall. Breathing slows, then lines up for a few cycles, a shared rise and fall that passes through the group without signal. The air moves in and out, quiet and measured. He feels his own chest lift and settle, steady and unforced. Fatigue sits evenly among them, spread thin rather than heavy. No one looks around to mark it. The moment is not acknowledged, not named, and it does not last. One man adjusts his position. Another clears his throat softly. The rhythm breaks and continues on its own terms. Nothing changes because of it. They remain seated, close, separate, the ground supporting all of them the same way. The thought comes without emphasis, together, and then gives way to the slow return of individual breathing as the stillness carries on. He looks away first, turning his head until the rim of his helmet brushes his cheek. The contact is light but enough to mark the shift. Gazes separate without notice, each man settling back into his own narrow space. The air remains still, holding nothing between them now. He feels tension gather along his neck as he adjusts his posture, shoulders rounding slightly inward. No one speaks. No sound rises to replace what just passed. Fatigue pulls his attention back inside, away from faces and small movements. Privacy returns without effort, restored by the simple act of not looking. He keeps his eyes forward, fixed on the ground ahead. The thought forms and closes the moment, enough seeing, and everything stays as it is. He lies down fully clothed, the stiff fabric bunching under his shoulders and along his ribs. The ground is dark and uneven beneath him, familiar by pressure alone. His eyes close, but nothing loosens. Every faint movement reaches him, the scrape of a boot, fabric shifting, a distant sound carried thin through the air. His jaw stays tight, teeth set without realizing it. Breathing stays shallow, measured, ready to stop and start again. Sleep does not come close enough to touch. Fatigue hums through him, sharp instead of soft, keeping his body alert even as it drains. He shifts once, then stills, letting the ground take his weight without trusting it. The air moves slightly, then settles. With his eyes closed, he listens, holding himself in place. The thought remains steady, stay ready, as the night continues without rest. He counts his breaths quietly, letting the air pass through his nose in slow pulls. The darkness stays the same with his eyes closed, offering no change to follow. His chest tightens slightly at the top of each inhale, then eases as he lets it go. He reaches a number and loses it, unsure when it slipped away. After a pause, he starts again from the beginning. The rhythm holds for a while, steady and deliberate, then blurs. Time stretches thin between counts, losing its edges. Fatigue sinks deeper, heavy but restless, pressing down without bringing rest. He shifts his jaw and exhales, resetting the pattern once more. The breathing continues, filling the space where sleep should be. The thought returns without frustration, again, and he lets the next breath start it over as the darkness remains unchanged. His thoughts loosen and drift without forming pictures. There is no scene, no memory attached, just movement without direction. He is aware of it happening, aware of slipping while never fully letting go. Sweat cools along his neck and collar, a thin dampness turning cold as the air settles. His eyelids feel heavy, weighted, but they do not close him off. Somewhere beyond his reach, an impact sounds and pulls him back, sharp enough to reset his attention. The unseen horizon stays where it is, sensed but never located. He blinks and breathes, then drifts again, hovering between effort and release. The fog thickens, dulling edges without bringing rest. Each time it feels close to completing itself, another sound arrives, distant but precise, cutting the thread. His body remains still while the mind cycles through the same shallow arc. Rest never finishes its work. The ground stays firm beneath him, unchanged. The thought passes through the haze and holds, still here, as the drifting resumes and the night continues without resolution. Light appears again, thin and gray, pressing through the air without warmth. Dust clings to his lashes when he opens his eyes, and he blinks it away slowly. He does not mark the change. The quiet holds, unchanged from before. Night ends without having given him anything back. A dull ache settles behind his eyes, steady and familiar. He shifts his head slightly and feels the ground answer with the same pressure as before. The body continues on its own, moving from one state into the next without pause. Breathing adjusts, deeper now, still controlled. Exhaustion stacks quietly, adding itself to what is already there. He stays where he is as the light strengthens by degrees. The thought comes without lift or resistance, go on, and he lets the moment carry forward. He reaches into his pack and brings out the older letters, edges softened from being folded and unfolded. The paper bends easily now, holding the shape of his hands. He reads the same lines again, phrases he knows before his eyes reach them. They repeat without changing, and they still fit where they are. His fingers grow numb as he holds the pages, pressure dulling the tips. Inside the pack, everything else stays still, tucked away and quiet. He does not add anything to the stack. There is no space for more. He folds the letters back the same way and slides them into place, careful to align the corners. Focus narrows and steadies as he closes the pack. The thought settles without effort, enough words, and he lets the stillness hold. He sets the paper on his knees and writes her name carefully, shaping each letter until it sits clean and even. The pencil moves with more control than speed. Everything else on the page is reduced to what will fit beside it. He keeps the sentences short, stopping before they stretch too far. The lettering stays neat, measured, leaving wide margins untouched. A distant rumble passes through the ground and fades without drawing his eyes up. His hand remains steady, wrist firm against the pull of fatigue. The effort is controlled, contained, as if too much pressure might tear the page. He pauses between lines, checking spacing more than meaning, keeping the surface clean. The page holds its quiet without complaint. The thought stays close to the motion of his hand, for her, and he continues shaping the words with care as the sound moves on. He writes that there is no news. The pencil presses firmly, graphite laying down a dark, even line that does not hesitate. As he finishes the sentence, the ground shifts beneath him, a low roll that lifts the page and settles it again. He tightens his grip and keeps the point down until the final letter is complete. The shock passes through the line of men and moves on, leaving the ground steady once more. He looks at the sentence as it stands. His hand remains steady, resting beside it, waiting for a correction that does not come. The page does not demand one. Fatigue presses inward, compressing everything behind his ribs, keeping it contained. He does not cross anything out or add to it. The statement holds its place, unchanged by the movement around it. He exhales once through his nose and lets the pencil rest. The thought stays quiet and firm, protect, and he leaves the words as they are while the air settles back into stillness. He folds the letter along its creases, running a thumb down the paper edge until it stays shut. The motion is careful, practiced. He slips it into the pack and pulls the strap tight, canvas rasping once before settling. The background vibration continues, low and constant, as if it has always been there. What he has not written remains where it is, held inside the fold. He exhales through his nose and feels a small release in his chest, brief but real. Fatigue eases its grip without leaving. His hands rest empty for a moment. The thought closes the action, done, and the noise carries on. He takes stock without moving. Sore joints register first, a quiet ache spread evenly through knees, shoulders, hands. He shifts slightly in his seated posture and feels it everywhere at once. Nothing rises above the rest. No single place asks for attention. The air stays still, offering no distraction. He rolls one shoulder, then lets it drop, the motion changing nothing. The ache settles back into place, full and dull, filling the body the way weight fills a sack. Fatigue sits deeper than before, a heavy wear that does not sharpen or fade. He stops sorting it, stops looking for differences. Accepting the total takes less effort than breaking it apart. He rests his hands on his thighs and stays where he is. The thought comes plain and complete, all of it, and he lets it stand without adjustment as the moment holds. He stops anticipating relief. His hands clench once, then loosen, skin pulling tight across the knuckles before settling again. The view in front of him stays limited, cut off by bodies and ground, offering nothing beyond what is already there. Movement is minimal, barely enough to mark time. A heaviness sits in his chest, steady and dull, rising and falling with his breath. Fatigue has settled into a resigned shape, no longer pushing back. He does not look ahead for an end. Continuation is enough. Plans shrink to the next few minutes, small enough to hold without strain. He shifts his weight and adjusts his grip, grounding himself in the present pressure. The thought comes in pieces and holds, next minute, and he lets the horizon stay close as the air remains still. Nothing resets overnight. He lifts his gear and feels its weight settle across his shoulders, familiar and unchanged. The straps pull down, pressing into muscle already worked thin. As he moves, slowly, each step carries the same load forward. There is no sense of starting again. Yesterday stays where it is, layered beneath today, adding its weight without asking. The movement is steady but strained, a forward drift shaped by habit more than intent. His shoulders tighten, then adjust, finding a balance that will hold a little longer. Fatigue stacks the same way the days do, one layer pressed onto the next, inseparable now. He no longer tries to sort what belongs where. The air offers resistance without motion, a constant pressure against effort. He keeps going because stopping would change nothing. The body understands this before the mind does. With each step, he carries every earlier morning with him, all of it moving together as one. The thought stays close to the work, keep carrying, and he lets the strain continue without expecting relief. He stands again, boots scraping lightly as friction builds and releases against the ground. The movement is slow, deliberate, guided by a hand signal rather than words. He steps forward when directed, feeling the familiar pull of steady pain settle back into place. The line advances at an even pace, bodies moving together without urgency. His legs respond as they have been trained to, carrying weight forward despite the drag of fatigue. Depletion does not stop the motion. It simply shapes it. He adjusts his stride to match the ground and keeps going. The air offers no change, only resistance. That the body answers is enough. The thought is brief and functional, go, and he follows it as the slow advance continues. He opens the notebook and looks at the page. The paper stays blank, pale and smooth, offering no resistance and no help. His hand rests there without moving, fingers curled loosely around the pencil. The air is still enough that he can hear his own breathing. He shifts his grip once, then stops. Nothing forms that wants to be written. The quiet posture holds, shoulders slightly forward, head lowered. Emotional fatigue settles in the same way his body has learned to settle, without argument. He lets the pencil touch the page and lifts it again, leaving no mark. Some things stay where they are, unshaped by words. He closes the notebook with a soft press of the cover and sets it aside. His hand remains on top for a moment, feeling the firmness beneath his palm. The thought arrives and ends the attempt, not this, and the still air keeps its silence. The images stay unspoken. They press in without forming words, a quiet internal pressure he feels behind his ribs. He lowers his gaze and keeps it there, looking inward rather than at anything in front of him. The stillness holds, giving nothing back. His chest tightens slightly as the memories settle, finding space without being arranged. He does not try to shape them or soften their edges. Letting them stay raw takes less effort than forcing them into order. Fatigue wraps around the strain and keeps it contained, held close where it can't spill. He shifts his shoulders once and feels the pressure move, then stop. The body accepts it as another weight to carry. Nothing is said. Nothing moves. The thought forms and stays simple, hold, and he keeps the memories where they are as the quiet continues. He thinks of telling her everything. The thought forms fully and stays, pressing at the back of his throat until it tightens. His breath remains steady, moving in and out without change, giving no sign of what passes through him. He does not reach for paper or pencil. His position stays the same, body held where it has settled, knees bent, hands resting idle. Somewhere in the distance, a sound echoes once and fades, too far away to require response. The air returns to stillness. The wish does not turn into motion. It loosens on its own and drifts off without leaving a mark. Fatigue smooths the edges of it, bringing a quiet acceptance that holds without effort. He remains where he is, breathing evenly, letting the moment pass through without acting on it. The thought lingers softly and recedes, someday, and nothing else follows as the echo disappears and the ground stays firm beneath him. He sits in silence, hands resting where they fell, fingers still. The ground in front of him does not change, fixed and plain. There is no movement to follow, no sound rising to replace the quiet. His body holds a calm heaviness now, weight settled evenly, no longer shifting. Fatigue sits where it has been building, no sharper, no lighter. He does not reach for anything. No action follows the pause. The moment stretches briefly and then releases on its own, without signal. Nothing is resolved, nothing tied off. He remains seated as the air stays unmoving around him. The thought closes it without emphasis, enough, and the silence continues.